Hi, my name is Chris Short and I'm an artist, and I'm here today to show you a little bit about making paper from recycled paper. This is part of a series called the Regeneration Challenge, and I guess the challenge today is to make a collage out of recycled paper and recycled materials. As an artist, a lot of my practice now is about using materials, renewing materials that would normally be thrown away. And I guess this is the idea of the Regeneration Challenge, is for us to be creative with the things that we have around us, to be able to renew them in some way, make them kind of interesting. So that's what we're looking at today. So I wish I could actually be there in person with you to do this workshop, as part of my practice is very much working with other people and making art together and sharing ideas. So this is a little bit of a challenge for me to do this, as I'm having to imagine that you're here. So anyway, paper, where does it come from? Good question. Most of it obviously is wood. But it can be made from any natural fibers around. So rice, you can find rice paper, which I have a roll of here. It's very fine paper usually, very fine grain. You can also have paper made out of natural fibers such as cotton and silk and linen. This is actually some khadi paper, which is made from cotton fibers that are broken down. This again is dyed khadi paper. Some artists, I have a book here actually with the artists who have made paper from all kinds of things. Fern, of which we have quite a bit in Newfoundland. I don't know if you can see that there. But there's artists actually making paper with fern. Some of the processes though do involve, when you're using these kinds of natural materials, they involve actually using things like caustic soda, which is not that great for the environment. And that's one thing that I'm very concerned about when it comes to practicing and making art. This is another one here. This is actually made from pine needles. An artist actually making that one. And so many things. This book is full of different things. Zucchini paper, which is rather neat. If you have some leftover zucchini plants, you can actually turn it into paper as part of the process. So paper has a long history. I mean, it was first, I guess, discovered, invented in China over 2,000 years ago. Since then, it was quite secret for about 100 years, and then through the Silk Road, it traveled into Tibet and Vietnam, and then about the 6th century, it arrived in China. Sorry, not in China, in Japan. So it has quite a long history through many, many cultures, and of course it's used worldwide now. So how is it made? Well, first of all, you've got to harvest those materials. So if it's wood, if it's plant materials, if it's cotton, you've got to be able to harvest those materials. So because we use about 90% trees now, wood from trees, there is an issue with deforestation, of course. So a lot of places, a lot of mills now have planting programs where they go out and they replant the trees. But of course that does take a number of years, many decades, for those trees to grow so that they can be harvested again. But it is a sustainable resource, which is great. And we need those trees, of course, because they provide the oxygen that we breathe. So they're very important when it comes to that. The only thing is, of course, transporting some of those materials does make it a little bit costly sometimes, and we have to look at the environmental impact of doing that. So now, let's have a look when we make our own paper. Some of it, of course, now there's been a big movement with recycled paper. And that's what I'm doing today, is I'm actually recycling paper. So how to do that? First of all, I usually cut up. You can tear, cut, scissors. If you have a shredding machine, that's great. I have a whole bunch here that's all torn up, ready to go. And then from there, you need to soak your paper to be able to break down the fibers again into a pulp before you can make anything with it. So I've got some here which has been soaking. What I've done too in my big pot here is I always make sure, it helps the process too if you actually boil the paper in the water for a short while, about 10 minutes, and it also sterilizes it. So if you're working, you know, with a group, it's always nice to have, you know, sterile, clean material to work with. So I take this pulp well, not this pulp, but this paper that's soaked in water, and then I need to make a pulp out of it. So I'm going to use my blender. It's an old blender. I only use it for paper. I don't use it for food anymore. Again, for health and safety reasons. I don't really want to, if there's a chance of any inks in my paper, and I do cut up paper without the ink too, because getting rid of those inks, yeah, you know, it can make your paper a different color. You can certainly blend it if you like, but it tends to turn everything gray, and then you've got inks and you don't know quite what the source is. When paper is manufactured in mills, they use chemicals and things to break down the fibers and also to remove the inks. So, because the difficulty with that is that it does leach out when they use a lot of water for making paper, and if it's full of chemicals, then they've got to make sure they've got processes in place that will remove those chemicals. So, you know, when the water goes back out into the environment, it's not going to pollute the environment. So anyway, for my paper making, I use just straight paper, scraps of paper, the outside of printed paper, and cut it up. And what I'm going to do here is I've put some of the soaked paper in here, and I've filled it up to about 2/3 with water in my blender there. So this is similar to the process that you would find in the mill, of course. Make sure I put the right part of the lid on, otherwise you could have a nice explosion of paper going everywhere. So yeah, in the paper mill, of course, what they do is they would add the chemicals, and they would cut up, grind all the wood pulp and the other materials, so that you end up with this pulp. So I'm doing the same kind of thing, only my machine is a blender. So, okay, and how to do this? You don't want to, if you want your blender to last any length of time, you do not want to put it on high, on full for a length of time. So I usually pulse it for a bit, and I apologize for the noise here. So for a few seconds on one, and then a little bit faster. And really what I'm doing here is I'm making it into a pulp. So all those fibers that are in the paper are being broken down, mushed up into this lovely gooey mess, which is pulp. And it's looking pretty good. You don't want to see any lumps in there if you want really fine paper. I'm going to give it one more whirl. Okay, right. So now I've got a pulp. And when I've done workshops with this before, you know, especially with younger people, they've often looked at this and gone, eh, because it's, you know, it looks kind of yucky, but it actually feels really soft. And it's lovely to work with. It's just you do have to get over that initial sort of yuckiness look. And white paper is a little bit better. What I've got here is I have 2 tubs. I've actually made 2 different types of paper because I've got different kinds of paper. Whatever you put in is kind of like what you get out. So I have here, if you can see this, but this is actually pulp made from brown, beige kinds of papers. So it is a different color. And it really doesn't look very appetizing, but that's okay. It works. So now, once I put this into my tub here, and I'm going to just get rid of this, make sure my hands are dry before I unplug it. And I can move this out of the way here. Yeah, so what I have now is I put the pulp into this tub here, but at the moment it's very thick. If I try to get a piece of paper out of this, it would be extremely thick, card-like paper. And so what I want to do is actually add enough water to it so that it becomes more liquidy. And that way I can lift a piece of paper out of it. Still quite thick, as you can see there, so I'm going to add a bit more water to that. You can see the amount of water that it needs, you know, for you to use this pulp. And we actually think about when mills are doing this, apparently it takes about 10 litres of water just to make one sheet of paper, one small sheet of paper. So it's a fair amount of water that you're using when you think about the environment and, you know, if there's a shortage of water. So now, I'm going to get rid of my tub here. Later on, I'll show you how you can strain off this so that you keep the pulp and you don't waste anything. But I'm going to put this down here for now, so it's out the way. Okay, right, so now we've got our pulp. And the lovely thing about recycling, of course, is I haven't added any chemicals to it, so it's environmentally friendly, which is good. And I'm going to use, now I need to make the paper, and you can use different types of screens for that. So I've got some here, these are actually embroidery hoops, and they have old, again, it's like recycling, you know, that screen that you have in the window, rather than chucking it out, use it to make paper. Any pieces of wood, you can make a frame, is another one. You can buy kits, of course, that have screens already fitted on them. This is one of those. Or you can make your own frames and then just tack screen on. Another thing that I've used in the past too is this sort of plastic screening material. This was many years ago when I collected this, and I still have it, so I still use it. I'm not going to throw it away. I'm going to keep on using it, again, thinking of the environment. So what kinds of things can you do with this pulp? Well, the first thing you can do is you can make a sheet of paper. And to do that, you take your screen, whichever one you want to use, whichever shape or size you can use, and you need to be able to just agitate it in the water. Give it just a little stir so that the pulp is all kind of like fairly evenly distributed over the top, and very slowly lift up so that the water has a chance to drain through. Now I'm just going to rinse this off. So now I've got, as you can see, a layer of pulp on the top there, and I need to get rid of that excess water. And this is, of course, is one of the processes that would happen in paper mills. They would actually have machinery, of course, that would do it. And here you're doing it with your hands, if you give this a try. So I need to squeeze off the excess water, and I put another screen on top and make a sandwich. It's like a paper sandwich is what I'm making. This, try to get it off, and then what I want to do then is actually make my sheet of paper. So I'm just going to, very carefully, the first screen that I put in there, gravity is wonderful. Everything wants to drain down, the water wants to drain down. So if I turn it this way around and very slowly lift up the top screen, like so, I then have my paper sitting on the bottom screen. And then I can take something, these are J-cloths, I reuse them all the time for paper making. You can use felt as well for it. And I'm just going to put this down if it will behave itself there. And, right. And then, lean over here. Hopefully you can see this. I'm going to flip it over so it goes straight on top of the J cloth. And again, gravity is going to pull that water down onto the absorbent material down there. And I'm going to now, once it's down there, you can give it a little rub. I'm going to take a corner and hopefully this will release. And it's going to take just a few more minutes, just a few more seconds there just to get the paper to start soaking into. So very gently from a corner, you lift up, and sometimes you have to just knock, you can see this, just knock the little bits on the edges just down so they don't hook up on the screen. So very gently lift this up like this. Okay, and then you have your sheet of paper. So I'm going to do, that's a very straightforward sheet of paper. It's not that creative and definitely doesn't involve collage, but I thought I would show you how to make that paper ground, which of course once it's dry you can then use a glue stick or whatever you want to glue anything you want onto it. So that's the traditional way of making collage. What I'm going to do right now is, though, I'm going to make a few different pieces, different process of collage with the pulp. I'm going to put another layer of J cloth over that and let that sit for a minute. Okay, so what can you use for the collage? Well, I can take one of these screens here, and I've got different materials I can use. So first one I think I'm going to do is using like magazine images and fabric. I've got this wonderful fabric with all kinds of things on it that I cut things out of. And I've already cut out a few things, like a nice little flower. When I put things onto my screen, though, what I'm going to do this time, instead of lifting the screen up through the pulp, I'm going to be pouring pulp over the screen so that it will trap what it is that I want to show. So I'm going to think, okay, I want to make a picture of some kind that's interesting. What do I want to do? What do I want to put in there? I've decided a flower is great. I could use that. I could, what else have I got here? Oh, I've got all kinds of banjos and guitars. I've got a great big guitar, which I could put in here. But if I put it this way around, of course, that's not going to be good because you're just going to see the back side of it. So I have to be able to put it face down. And the guitar is obviously quite large, so it's, I think our eye is going to be right on that guitar when it comes to looking at it when it comes out as a picture. So the emphasis is going to be on a large thing that's in the center. But if I wanted to, I could balance it out a little bit by putting maybe a few more flowers around, and again, remember to put them face down. So my guitar's not going to be quite so dominant now. It's going to have a little bit of variety. Hopefully it'll sort of send a message of creating music, flower and enjoyable music. I don't know. It depends on what kind of message. Now I could always put in a little chicken, which would really make things quite different. Maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll take that one out. So you can decide how you want to arrange your composition so that it's interesting, right? Now, okay, so I've got my things all laying face down on my screen, and I'm going to take some pulp. This time I'm going to use the slightly darker color because to me it kind of blends in well with the colors that are here. When this dries, though, it's going to be quite a bit lighter than what it looks like when it's wet. Now, very carefully, things want to move when you do this. They want to move, so I have to put just little bits of pulp over the top very gently when I'm doing this, because otherwise things will move around, and where you think you had a wonderful composition that was all lovely, interesting and balanced, it suddenly becomes something else, which could actually even be better. You never know with this. So I'm going to put this down here. And very gently. So I've got quite a thick layer of pulp on this one. This is quite a thicker mixture. And again, I'm going to drain off now. I'm going to make a sandwich with this one. And squeeze off. Make sure you make your sandwich kind of flat when you're doing it at first, because if I turn this sideways, you probably lose some of the pulp off the side. So, yeah. And I'm going to try and remove as much of that water as I can. So I'm slowly turning it a little bit more sideways now, so it will drain off. Again, using that gravity that's there. Takes a little bit of time, but the results are really quite fun and exciting with this. So again, I'm going to, now gravity this way, I'm going to very gently lift off. Very gently. I went a bit fast there and it made a little ripple, but that's okay. Again, kind of some of the adventure in art making is the little kind of, not really mistakes, but the little things that happen when you're making something. So I'm going to put it face down onto, so you can sort of see my piece there, hopefully, with the screen on top. And I'm going to just give it a little tap, let all that gravity soak, that water soak down through the next J cloth, and very gently lift. Oops, no, it hasn't sort of absorbed down yet, so to take it a little minute there. Okay, now I think we're getting there. And very gently lift up from the corner. Again, just nudging as you go, very slowly, nudging very slowly so that it releases onto the J-cloth. Another one here. That corner wanted to stick there for a bit. Okay, so, oh, now I went a bit fast there, and you can see what happened when I did. It just ripped the corner. But that's okay, because, you know, like, who says an artwork has to be exactly a rectangle? It could be any shape, and sometimes these unusually shaped edges can make it really interesting. So, and because any bits of pulp I can put back into the mix so I don't waste anything. It's good. So, what I've got there is my piece of paper now, my collage with a chicken, and his head's kind of looking at the guitar there. So, okay. So that's one way of working with it, and say newspaper or magazine cutouts. You can use words, of course, as well. Just make sure that they're in the right position when you put them, because it's going to be in reverse. And any kind of fabric that you want to cut out is great. So there's lots of things you can use with this kind of process of collage. I'm going to try another one now. And this time, I'm going to vary it a bit with two coloured pulps. So, other things I've got here. I have sage leaves, which are super, just dried. You can dry them, any kind of leaves. You know, I've got some maple leaves. I have some angel wing begonia petals, these things here, which are really quite cool. I'll put some of these things on here. Again, the side you want, you place face down. So all kinds of different things that you can use, and you can dry them just by putting them into a book and, you know, pressing them between. I have a microwave press, which works really good. I'm just going to see if I've got another little leaf here. And yeah, so again, you can create your composition, you can make it interesting, you know. There's lots of different shapes and sizes and colours, depending on what you want to. This one's broken up a little bit, but that's okay. Yeah, so Again, I've got a little composition here. I can overlap things a little bit and they'll still stick. And this is a natural fibre here, which is, so I've got a few, anyway, I've got a few things there. I quite like the look of that. So now what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to mix two different colours with my pulp. So very slowly again, I'm going to pour over the top and I'll put a little bit of this whiter pulp in there, and I'm going to put some of the other colour pulp. So you can really have quite a bit of fun mixing different coloured pulp, which of course, you know, they say the paper comes from different things that, different kinds of paper, different coloured paper, that's scrap that I have sitting around. And if you want really good quality works, then the scraps you would use would be good quality paper. If you don't want, if you're not too concerned about having something acid-free, then any paper that you have around will work. So it does tend to, though, this process does tend to, the more that you recycle paper, the more it loses its cellulose. So oftentimes you'll find that mills will add some other natural fibres again to the whole process in order to maintain the paper's adhesiveness and integrity, if you like. So, okay, so I've got my piece here. I'm going to do the same thing again, make a sandwich. I've got the same size screen for this one. It's a little bit of a different shape of paper. It's more of a square, this one. And again, I'm going to squeeze out as much of the liquid as I can. Flat, first of all. And then you can turn it sideways to get a bit more out. Here's this. Say, I wish that you could be doing this yourselves, and hopefully you will give this a try. Okay, so I've got all the water out here. And very gently, I'm going to lift up that screen, like so. And I need to put another J cloth down to this, and a little extra piece there. Yeah. Okay, let that soak in. Yeah. I was catching there for a bit, so you have to be a little patient with this part. Just don't rush it. Take your time. Sing a song. Hum to yourself. There we go. Okay. So, if you can see that, but that's what I have now for my piece of paper for this one. Again, multicoloured pulps. So another way of working with the collage is to do that. And I enjoy those natural materials. They're great fun. So now, what else can we do? Oh, there's so many different things you can do with this. You can have lots of fun exploring things. You can cut up different fabric scraps and all kinds. I've got all kinds of, I don't throw anything out, you see. If you keep it all, you can use it to make artworks with. So I have all kinds of like fabric scrap screens, string scraps with that one. So another process you can use, and for this one, I actually did some of this actually for this piece here, and I used a screen that it dried on. So this has actually all kinds of little tiny branches of flowers actually embedded in it. I don't know if you can see that. And it creates a really lovely texture. I use this screen, and I actually just let it dry on the screen. You want a nice warm, dry place. You don't want a damp, cold place, because otherwise you could get mold with natural materials. So you do want to make sure it's dry and warm, so the pulp dries quickly. But this one, yeah, I've actually got all kinds of things embedded, but I used what I call a two pulp pour method for this one. So I'm just going to show you how to do that. Again, I can use these screens, that's not a problem. So for this, maybe I'll use some of these pieces of string because they can have a really lovely texture too when you sort of have them embedded in your paper. And you can embed, sort of thicker things like little twigs, and I have these old toothpick things as well that can go in there. Little scrap pieces of string I've got here as well. That might be interesting, having that embedded in there. I've also got pine needles here as well, so all kinds of wonderful things that you can put in there. So to do a two-pulp thing, though, first of all, I'm going to take this off, and then afterwards I'm going to use it. So what I do first for this is I'm going to put a layer of pulp first on my screen. Get down there. Here we go with the white. And I might put a little bit of the brown in here as well. It's a bit thicker, the mixture with the brown, so, or the beige, it'll end up being beige. And then I'm going to lay my collage pieces all the way over the top of that. My little twigs and sticks and thicker materials. I've even used buttons before, flat buttons in here. So anything that's flat will work. Now, and then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to very gently pour pulp over the top of this. So some of it's going to be caught, some of it will stick out, and some of it you'll get this sort of interesting texture. So you can actually make you're making a sandwich with a sandwich almost. A pulp sandwich. Okay, so again I'm going to put this on the top and squeeze. So so many different things you can do with this. It is just fun. It's really fun to explore it. And of course, with these all these artworks, of course, they can make really lovely little gifts for someone. You can write messages on them and give them as cards. They make wonderful decorations as well for your house. I mean, some of the natural materials do slowly fade over time. But that makes it kind of interesting, actually, is seeing how they change colour over time. So, okay. I really get into this, you see, so I apologise. I really enjoy doing this. I hope you will too. Okay. Very gently, I'm going to lift off the top screen now. And so now I've got this side. It'd be, interesting to see what kind of textures I get when I press it down. And when it's afterwards, once it's all been pressed and the water's completely out of it. And I'll show you how you can do that fairly quickly in a while. So, I've got that one. Now, another way last one I think I'm going to show you is you can mix, like in your pulp, I'm going to take a little piece of pulp here, and I've got all kinds of herbs here, which are probably going to stick to my fingers. Just wipe my hands here a little bit so that they're dry. So you can mix all kinds of herbs and things in your pulp, which they become embedded in it, so you can put seeds in it. In fact, one environmentally interesting thing I've seen before is where people have actually sort of put seeds in the pulp, and then they've planted their pieces of paper outside in the garden, and the seeds have grown into flowers, which is kind of like a nice way of encouraging things to grow, regenerate all of our plants that we have. So I've got this kind of, now it's all embedded and in here, and I'm just going to pour it over the top. Again, same process, only this time I'm going to have little bits of herbs. I think I've got this rosemary. It's old rosemary that was really too old to eat anymore. You see, I don't waste anything. Try not to throw out anything. Because it really does help our environment if we can, not waste our paper, not waste our food. If we can think about, how does what we have how does it get here? How can we reduce, things having to be transported to us if that transportation is using something like fossil fuels, where it's, harming our air. And that's one of the problems actually with paper making worldwide, is the pollution that it causes. It's the amount of water it uses, it's the chemicals in the water and runoff, it's the gases, carbon dioxide that's produced, and other gases in the production, which are harming our environment. But there's lots of technology now being developed and being used, which is cleaning everything up before it goes into our environment, which is wonderful to see. And it's being able to create, and think about different ways of cleaning everything up so that our environment and our lives and ourselves are all better. Anyway, right, let me see. And again, this one is more like a textured paper with different colours and things in it. So this is the last one I'm going to demonstrate, and I hope you will have fun creating your paper collages. So, and be inventive, be creative, do what, you would find interesting. Got little bits of pulp do end up all over the place, so. Okay, now, what we need to do now is actually get the rest of the water out. I need to lift this screen first, though. And there's a slow way of doing that, in which let me just get this screen off here, would press all the water out. So you'd put a lot of weight on the top and squeeze all the water out. And that's really what they do in the paper mills too, is they will compress it and they heat it. And because that uses a fair amount of energy, but try to be as minimal energy as possible. You would need to squeeze all this water out. And I'm just going to press this all down right now and squeeze as much as I can into these J-cloths. Now, but to help this process a little bit more, I've got some more J-cloths here. And what I'm going to do, is I've squeezed out as much as I can there, is I am going to very gently again, I almost ripped that piece of paper in half because I went too fast. You have to go slow. Right, so I'm going to lift that piece off, and then I can transfer this piece very gently from that piece onto a dry J-cloth, like so. Again, let gravity do its work. Press it down, and very gently in the corner again, lift off. So I can keep doing this and reusing J-cloths. And the wonderful thing about J-cloths, of course, is you can just quickly rinse them off and use them again. So again, it's recycling materials all the time when you're making things. So, okay, so that's that one. And again, I can do this for all of these. But to speed up the process, and of course I should have put my iron on. Hopefully that will heat up fairly quickly. Again, it's using energy. Hopefully it's renewable energy. But what I'm going to do now is, and I've used this old piece of cotton stuff here, and I've got old pillowcases here I use for ironing. Again, recycling materials. So what I'm going to do here is actually iron this piece so that it's dry, and I can do this with all of these pieces, and perhaps at the end of this we'll have some images of these pieces and what they look like at the end that we can show you, rather than you watching me iron for half an hour. Or maybe not that long, but anyway, so I'm just going to take this piece of paper. Here we go. It's my piece of Herbie paper. And I'm going to lay it on there. Now you have to be, again, kind of careful with it. The thicker it is, the stronger it is, but it's still quite weak right now because it's got a lot of water in there. And what I'm going to do now is iron the paper. And I put it between layers of cotton, and I've got the iron on, it's at a medium-high heat. It's on a 5 on my settings. Because if you put the iron straight on the paper, you would find that your paper would burn, and it would stick to the iron, and you would not be very happy with that. So actually using cotton cloth of some kind to iron the paper helps to get the heat off. And I have quite a few of these here, so again, I'm doing this as a rush rather than leaving it to air dry. I'm trying to sort of do it so that you can see how quickly you can actually get your piece of paper. And let's try again with another piece here. Again, I'm applying pressure and heat, which is a similar process to how the mills work when they're doing their stuff there for paper. Okay. How are we doing there? Still quite, it's beginning to get there, but it's going to take a little bit of time. So rather than you watching me, as I say, what I'll do is I'll make sure we've got some pictures of these pieces once they're finished. As you can see, slowly it's beginning to dry off. You can see even the edges there now are coming much lighter, and it will be, yeah, when it's finished, it'll be a really nice piece of paper that I can use to draw on or write on. Now, what can I do with all this pulp? One nice thing that you can do as an extension of actually creating collages is you can pour the pulp. And I do this with all of this pulp. You can actually pour it into a screen, let it drain. So, because you really don't want to pour this pulp down the sink. You would end up with a blocked sink in no time. That is not what you want to do. But you can drain all the water off the pulp, which I'm doing here. And you then have this wonderful sculpting material. And what I've used this for in the past is actually, and I've brought this mask here too because it makes some really neat sculptures, is you can just attach this. I mean, it's plastic, right? So, and it's years old. And you can attach this all the way through and bend it out, leave it to dry again, and you've got literally a mask out of pulp that you can use. Any kind of shape, you know, like the screen itself, actually, you can make a bowl shape if you leave the pulp sitting there. But what I do with this pulp now, rather than it ever being wasted, again, it's all about saving, not wasting, is I put this pulp into, I've got recycled yogurt containers, and I can pour all of this pulp, keep it there, and I can store it in the freezer for months, and then bring it out, thaw it out, and use it to make artworks again. So it's, yeah, it's a very versatile material. Anyway, yeah, so that. So you don't waste anything with this at all, and you don't clog up your drain, which is a good idea. Yep, put that there. So, anything else I was going to mention? Yeah, so I guess, you know, thinking about this whole process and what I do with my art practice too is, you know, sort of caring about each other and caring about ourselves and our environment is just something that's really important. And this is kind of a really fun art-making process that I hope you will enjoy. So, yeah, please regenerate paper and make some fun art collages. Thanks.